Hello everyone, I am Brady Bridges and I'm the broker and owner of Reside Real Estate here in Fort Worth, Texas. I want to welcome you to another episode of Real Talk with Reside Real Estate. We are a top producing team here in Fort Worth, Texas, and we want this podcast to be a resource for anyone looking to learn more about real estate and the great city of Fort Worth, Texas. Today I'm joined by Katherine Loftis of Fort Worth Title. She was born and raised in Fort Worth before attending college at Midwestern State in Wichita Falls. She's worked in customer service before starting in the title industry 10 years ago as a receptionist. And now she's worked her way up and she's a branch manager at Fort Worth Title. Kat enjoys spending time with her family, traveling, live music, time outdoors, and good dinners with great people. Kat, thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Sorry for the confusion this morning.
No worries. We got it sorted out. I'm here. All good.
So I'm really excited to have you in. Obviously, we've been working together at Fort Worth Title and new company here in town. And just kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you ended up where you're at.
I kind of fell into it, honestly, by accident. I was working in France, which, of course, is a staple in Fort Worth. I was there for a long time and decided, hey, I need a grown-up job. And got into the title industry, was at Old Republic for almost 10 years, Radican for a year, and then this opportunity presented itself, and I said, okay, why not?
Fred's is great. So kind of just start off telling people exactly what a title company does. You know, on our end as agents, I feel like a lot of times you guys and the lenders are really some of the unsung heroes of what goes on, because once we get a deal under contract, you know, we do the front end of getting things to inspection and getting past that point, but then the real grind of all the paperwork and getting everything lined out. So kind of tell everybody what title insurance is and what you guys do during that process.
So ultimately, at the end of the day, title insurance is making sure no one else has rights or claims to your property, and that it is free and clear and yours to have as long as you own the property. What we kind of do is a well-orchestrated machine in a way, because we're the third party to the contract. So we're kind of getting in on all sides, from agents, buyers, sellers, lenders. It really just depends. But we start to finish survey if there's a HOA on the property, if there are payoffs, if there are any liens or judgments, anything like that. We call it carrying title, and getting releases filed if there are anything like that, and then up into the closing part, I guess you could say.
You know, I haven't ever looked into it, but like, how long ago did they actually start? Do you know how long ago did they actually start like recording title and doing this type of work?
For as far as title insurance?
Yes.
Over 100 years ago. So that I do know. And it kind of, in Tarrant County, it got a little bit tricky when the courthouse burned. I think in the early 1900s.
Okay.
And then, so pretty much up until, I would say, 2010, not everything was electronic. So it's a little different now, I guess you could say. Some of the closers I've worked with who've been in the industry for a really long time, they like to tell stories about carbon paper and typewriters and whiteout and preparing settlement statements that way, which I can't.
I figure our timing in this industry is fortunate. Like for us, having to use maps, go books, and like go pick up keys, I can't imagine how much more time it would take. And I can't, on y'all side, if y'all had to go pull the records from the courthouse and do that type of work, it would just take forever.
Well, in some of the smaller counties, that's actually how they still operate.
Really?
Yes. And if they need to order a tax certificate, they'll literally walk down to the courthouse and order a tax certificate.
So you're the manager of Fort Worth Title, you're an escrow officer. So was there specific training or licensing that you had to get to actually become an escrow officer, or how does that process look?
So as far as becoming an escrow officer, you do have to be licensed through Texas Department of Insurance.
Okay.
And you can't be a felon. I mean, they do the background check, the whole thing. As far as knowledge base to be an escrow officer, it's really hands-on. There's not necessarily a book that you could read and study and take the test and be like, okay, I can solve all the title problems now. Texas, well, TLTA, Texas Land Title Association, they do a we call it quote unquote title school, but it's annually once a year. It's pretty intensive. It's like 2.5 days, but it's 8 to 5, and you're just in classes, doing classes.
Just continue education.
Yeah, kind of a thing. But it's a really good way to get a base knowledge for the title industry, I guess you can say. I went in 2016 when I was in Austin. I don't know if I necessarily learned a bunch that helps me in my day-to-day, but as far as the general knowledge and just kind of what we're dealing with, what is the commitment? What just basics?
Sure.
Huge.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times in y'all's job, and it's similar to us, but I think a lot of people in their mind have this vision of you guys just sitting there and grinding paperwork all day. But I know just from dealing with you guys and with my agents that you have to do your business development, you're managing it. There's a whole lot to it. And I don't know how you'll get anything done, honestly, half the time, because I know I call you all the time asking for stuff, and I'm sure there's 50 other agents doing the same thing. So how do you manage day to day to get in these closings and also take care of the business you have?
So we kind of joke in the industry that it takes a special breed of crazy to be in title, basically. And it's a customer service driven industry, in my opinion. Not everyone would agree with that. But since title insurance in Texas is regulated, really at the end of the day, the only thing you have to sell is the service that sets you apart from the next company. And coming from service industry, and organized chaos is basically how every title company operates. And once you figure out the flow and kind of hold people accountable for certain jobs and positions, and we need this and XYZ, it kind of works itself out, honestly. But you do have to kind of have time management.
Well, I think Fort Worth titles are a great fit for you because the whole premise of what they try to build that around is just the servicing Fort Worth, the people of Fort Worth, and the agents of Fort Worth. So I think that's a great fit that you're there. So let's get into some specifics here. So if you're going through, majority of the stuff you do is residential, right? Residential title policies. So what's the difference if whether you're buying an investment versus a family home or a condo or a commercial property? Does it make any difference in what y'all are doing on y'all's end of the work?
It does, and it actually depends on the type of title policy that we issue, whether it's 1 to 4 family residential or whether it's commercial. It actually changes the type of policy that you will receive at the end of the transaction. And investment properties, it really kind of just depends on the type of investment property. Usually title work on those is a little bit messy, just kind of as a rule of thumb. Commercial transactions, I love. They're usually super, I wouldn't say easy, but they have a good flow to them.
And I'm sure depending on the deal, a lot of that's really spelled out how things are going to be with the attorneys directly that are involved, right? So
yes, and attorneys, I love working with attorneys, which sounds kind of crazy, but this is how it's going to be, and this is what's going to happen, or it's not going to happen.
Sure.
They understand that. We understand that. And so it's just a great flow, honestly. Yeah.
So, I know a lot I've talked to, doing this for a while. I don't know if this is true, so I'm curious about this. The technology you guys use for doing a lot of this stuff I've heard a lot of it's really antiquated and needs updating. Is that true?
Yes and no. Which is
like some of the systems y'all use are super slow and haven't been really updated user facing in a long time. I know that's not really anything anybody's interested here, but I'm curious about it.
So I've worked with 3 different systems. And this, I think there's a happy medium of everybody got together and created, the best, right? But everyone has their own interests. So that's not going to happen. But the majority of the systems are pretty antiquated as far as technology goes. We actually work off of a web-based software, I guess you could say, which is huge. It's a game changer as far as accessibility and being able to get people what they need in a timely fashion. Because if I'm on the road, I can hop on, log in, no big deal. Whereas with other systems, you are doing 2-factor authentication. You're waiting on, a server in a room in the middle of nowhere to respond to you. And so it's just,
That's just the nerd part of me with technology that I was just curious about.
No, yeah.
So how often are there issues when you're going through doing these searches? Does it come back clean a majority of the time, or how often are you guys having to go in and actually cure? Obviously, the most common thing that's probably going to come up is mortgages owed on properties, things like that. But how often do you have situations where you're having to clear a ton of different things?
It's funny you ask that, because right now we're having a run of just messy title work. Like today we got a file back and there are 3 abstracts of judgments, 2 federal tax liens, and then one of the parties that's vested in title is deceased. And so we have to deal with their interests. We have to deal with...
Is this a residential deal? Mm-hmm. So what's your first step in that? Like that comes back, you send to the client, obviously, probably the title work what you found.
So once title work comes back, we review it, and then we figure out what we need from the person selling the property. So,
because you can't issue your commitment until you clear all the things up, right?
We have to cure everything that pops up on Schedule C. Yeah, and so we say, hey, we need we ask for all the good stuff. There's a period of time in my life where people are like, hey, Kat, what do you do? I'm like, I ask people for their social security number all day. And literally because you have, in order to get a payoff on your mortgage, which the title company has to order, and for you to sell your property, we have to have your social and your loan number. And so we ask for all this sensitive information, social, date of birth.
You get really comfortable in real estate asking people all the things you're not supposed to ask, like how much money do you make?
You have to have that comfort, talking to people and asking for all of their sensitive info. And when a commitment comes back, it's kind of like an extra layer, because, you didn't pay your taxes, or, so you had a lawsuit this year, what happened? So you kind of...
It's a high trust position. I mean, you're knowing a lot about on both sides, what people are doing, where they're at in their lives and their financial situations, things like that. So what is your favorite part about doing the job?
Gosh, that's a really loaded but good question. I think the puzzle and just kind of making it all fit together. And then other than that, buyers who come in that are just so excited to own their first home. That's a really cool feeling to be a part of that and experience that, not just with the buyers, but also with their agent, because their agent has really put their time and effort into their clients and the buyers that trusted their agent. So it's just like one big, happy, awesome situation.
Yeah, it's funny how often, you guys see the deals come in, deals fall apart. So like in terms of deal flow, how much can an escrow officer like yourself, and you have a team, right? What can one person handle on their own? If you have let's just say standard residential transactions, what's a realistic number that one person can actually do and do at a high level and succeed?
I think that's a phenomenal question, and it depends. There's not a set answer for that, because it really ultimately, at the end of the day, it depends on your team.
Sure.
And it depends on how you work. So I'm paperless, which is kind of unheard of in the title.
Yeah, half the title escrow officer I go into, it's like a stack of paper this high.
Yeah, and they
all over the place.
Folder that's encyclopedia kind of a situation. And I don't have any of that. And so it allows, because of the systems we put in place, it allows me to be paperless and know what's going on with each file at the same time. And so because we are paperless, right, I'm not chasing a physical file to find an answer to a question someone's emailing me about or calling me about. I'm able to do more volume, as opposed to, we call it chasing files. Again, let me pitch on, we'll stop what I'm doing, go find physical file, run through the encyclopedia, find the answer, and then go from there. And I think that's probably where the title industry is heading in general one day, hopefully. But I would say, and everybody has a different limit, anywhere from 30 to 60 files a month, I think, is probably pretty realistic for any closer.
That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but it's fun. I tell people I drank the Kool-Aid.
Well, and I think you've done a really good job about you have to have a team in place so that you can, highest and best use of your time, right? So you know what you're really strong at, and you know the things that you can pass up to someone else that can take on. That's something I try to use in my business all the time, is highest and best use of time. Like Jessica and Christine here, they're way better at the marketing aspect than I am about getting things up and getting things posted. So pass that off, let me focus on the clients and the sales, and just like kind of what you do with your business is keep churning it out.
Well, that, and shout out to the girls, Kim and Amanda and Erica. Amanda and I, and Kim too, we all worked together originally at Older Public. And then we were all at Radican, and now we're all at Forward Title. And just having a team, and Kim handles the back end of things, so like funding, dispersing, reporting, and then Amanda handles all the front end of things, so getting payoffs,
all the input,
all the input basically. And having a solid team. They're my bosses, right? So they tell me, hey, we need this, what's going on,
sure,
do this kind of a thing. But without them, what I do would not be possible, honestly.
Yeah,
it's not.
You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
100%.
So as you're going through these process, I know that half the time we as agents are griping at you guys and the lenders, like, what's going on? Why is this not closing on time? What can buyers and sellers do as they're going through the process? Help kind of speed things up so that, because I know we're on you guys all the time, and not always, but y'all are easy people to call and blame, you guys and lenders. So what can we tell our clients when they're going through this process to do to make sure everything's going smooth for you guys, so we're not holding y'all up on your job?
The number one piece of advice for any buyer I could give them, it's kind of twofold. Number one, use a local lender. So not to knock any of the big guys, but the bigger banks, they're more difficult to deal with.
Yes.
Just all the way around, but especially on our end of things, I feel like they have more red tape, stuff like that. And then as a buyer, if your lender asks you for something, get it to them, because that will cause a delay if you drag your feet. So when they ask you for something on a Monday and you get it to them on a Friday, you're 5 days behind.
Yeah.
And they have to have that for underwriting approval and so on and so forth. That's honestly the number one tip I can give to a buyer. To a seller, just be patient and flexible and not defensive when somebody's like, hey, can I have your social because, this issue popped up on his title.
I'm literally just doing my job.
100%. 100%. And so just having a little bit of patience and grace and being responsive. Honestly, communication is so key.
Are you typically, with your team, when you're talking to obviously, like, I know in a transaction we get stuff from your team, are most of the people who are actually the seller or the buyer, they're hearing from you most of the time, or who's handling that communication? How does that process look?
Typically Amanda reaches out to sellers and buyers, and she does a bunch of the processing, I guess you could say. I'm always happy to take a phone call, talk to anybody I can. Usually I get involved when there is a big problem, or if there is like a title situation that needs fixing, like a affidavit of heirship, something along those lines. Or like we had a contract where the seller passed away 3 days after we went under contract. So then I kind of hopped in.
Transaction still goes through.
It's still in process. We're probating a will, waiting on an appointment.
If they want to wait.
Yeah, and they do, fortunately for the seller. And so that's typically when I get pretty hands-on in the file. Yeah, I guess you could say.
But that's what you said you like to do. That's the puzzle, right?
It's my favorite part.
Yeah.
100%.
So what should people be looking for in a title company? Because you mentioned, right, it's title companies, there's escrow fees, and escrow fees may adjust between different title companies, right? But other than that, the premiums on the policies are all going to be the same across the board in the state of Texas, right?
Those are regulated by Texas Department of Insurance. And as far as what someone should be looking for in a title company, it depends on who's looking.
So let's go from an agent perspective first, and then also from a client. So let's just say you have we talk about agents, but if you weren't, let's just say you weren't represented and you had a piece of property that you were selling and you needed to find somewhere to do it, what should they be looking for? And I guess you can play a plug. Why should they pick Fort Worth Title as well?
I would say, honestly, it depends on the patience level. I know that sounds so strange, of the escrow officer. And part of that is because for sale by owners, we call FSBOs, are usually people who, and no offense to anybody who does this, it's typically sellers who think that they can handle it and know what they're doing. Some do, and it turns out great. Some don't, and that's either when a transaction falls apart or it gets kind of messy, I guess you could say. And so it really depends on the staff and the people that you as a seller are dealing with without an agent. And so as long as they have knowledge and patience and are responsive, again, as communication goes, I think that's what a seller working without an agent wants in a title company.
Okay.
Honestly. And as far as an agent goes, customer service, not just for the agent, but for their clients as well. And I mean, our office hours are 8:30 to 5, but are those my hours?
No. I think you get annoyed with me texting you on the weekend all the time.
You're not the only one. Don't worry about it. But a lot of escrow officers don't operate that way. And that's okay. That's well within their right. But what's going to set me apart? It's customer service at the end of the day, because it's all regulated. And so anything that I can do to better enhance the experience, not just for the agent, but also for their client, that's where my heart and soul is. And so I think that's what an agent should be looking for in a title company.
How do you manage work-life balance? Just curious, because I know you're just as busy as we are, and I know your work may stay at work, but it really doesn't most of the time. So, I had Carly on here a couple of weeks ago, and that was one of the big topics we talked about for new agents was work-life balance, which it almost doesn't exist in the beginning. So I'm just curious from your perspective, because I've known so many title officers that you'll drive by the office and their car's still there at 7:30 at night. So how do you manage that?
So for a long time, I did not manage it at all whatsoever. I mean, I was getting home at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. There were some weeks where I was at the office until like 1 a.m., literally. And so through the transition to Fort Worth Title, it's just, I'm an escrow officer when I'm at work, but I'm also an escrow officer when I'm not at work. And so as long as I have that flexibility and can take care of what I need to take care of personally in my time, but also provide service to my clients, that's kind of, I mean, there's no magic formula for it, right?
Well, I think anybody, most people that are operating at a high level in their industry, I think all struggle with work-life balance. So, because I love what I do, and you have to have some of that in you to be doing what you do, I would imagine.
Absolutely. You have to have the grind and the care. You have to have I care about what I'm doing, mentality in order to be successful.
And y'all are making kind of the mantra I've got this year for our business is impact. Like we want to make an impact through real estate, and you guys do that in what you do. It may be kind of back end, but you're ensuring that what people are buying and putting their money behind is a safe and they're protected, and nobody else has a claim to it. So y'all make a huge impact in that, and it is fun to come to closing. Y'all get to see if it's a good experience. It's a good experience.
Good experience, exactly.
On the sometimes you dread showing up to a showing if things have just gone haywire, but like Jessica was in there with the locks the other day and said it was just a great time. So, so one of the last questions I ask everybody is, what do you love about Fort Worth? For anybody that is either moving in from out of the area or listening that's in the area, what's your favorite thing about Fort Worth, and what would you tell people?
That's such a hard question to answer, just because Fort Worth is so amazing. But it's a big small town, or a small big town, however you want to put it. But I love that feel of Fort Worth because it really is a small town feel. But now we have all these people here, right? And so that's
the same answer everybody gives.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
It's true.
I mean, it's true, but it's also maintaining the integrity of like the original or where the West begins, right? And
I think a lot of people they just don't understand how different Fort Worth is. Like, it is its own cultural anomaly here. Just, local support for businesses. I love it.
I mean, between businesses, food, live music, things to do. I went down to the Stockyards last fall, and I hadn't walked around down there. I could not believe.
Well, if you haven't been since last fall, it's totally different. I mean, there's so much new stuff.
And but it's still that small town feel, and people are still friendly, and nobody's, going to be a perfect driver, but I mean, it's nothing crazy like Dallas, in my opinion. But it's just a good feel in the city, I guess you could say. Yeah.
My wife gives me a hard time because I've got like a 4-mile radius that I want to stay within.
I have a bubble. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I have a bubble. And when you get out of that bubble, you're like, oh.
Like people will say, oh, you're out of your radius here.
Yep.
Well, Kat, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So any last advice that you could give anybody? And also tell, if anybody had any more questions, how can they get a hold of you?
They can go to our website or shoot me an email, Katherine at ftworthtitle.com. And just if you're going through the process of buying or selling a home and you're not working with an agent, work with an agent. That's what they're there for. They're there for your best interests.
Sure.
And if you're an agent looking for a title company, we'd be happy to work with you. And if you're working with a title company that's not communicating, there are, and not just us, right? There are other title companies out there that will communicate because no one can do their job, whether you're an agent, buyer, seller, lender, or title, without communication.
Being responsive, I think it trumps experience half the time because you're able to get things done a whole lot quicker.
Well, and I can respond and say, you know what, I don't have an answer, but I will get one for you, and then follow back up with the answer.
Sure.
But if you just ignore it and don't...
Well, then it just turns into a massive problem.
Exactly.
Well, Kat, thank you again. This was another episode of Real Talk with Reside. Thank you for listening. And if we could ever be a resource, please reach out. Thank you.